All right, so the theme for our series has been from Proverbs 31, verse 30. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. So in the series, we've been looking at godly women of the Bible and how they exemplify the Beatitudes taught by Jesus in Matthew chapter 5. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." All right, so first off, what does it mean to be pure in heart?
I don't know, you asked this every week and I don't.
Have good intentions, not to have evil.
That good intentions. Okay. Actually, David had a sermon on Sunday morning sermon was on pure in heart. So good intentions. I like that one. The Greek word for pure here in Matthew 5:8 is katharos, meaning clean, pure, or clear. And the heart, of course, refers to the mind, that is our thoughts and feelings. So one aspect of pure in heart is singleness of motive, that is a pure focus. And so one definition for pure of heart in the context of Matthew 8 is a person with singleness of purpose in devotion to God. And we're going to be looking at Elizabeth and Anna this morning as examples of single-minded devotion to seek God and submit to his will regardless of their circumstances. And I want to look at 3 points today. Their similarities, how they both demonstrated purity of heart, and third, how God was able to use them because of their purity of heart. So a little background, there are 8 Beatitudes, so I knew there'd be some repetition here, but I will actually get to all the Beatitudes. I have a sketch out for the next 2 lessons, so I will get to all of them. But the first time we studied Blessed are the Pure in Heart, it was with Ruth. And if you remember, we saw her single-minded devotion to Naomi. Now, this was just me geeking out, but I get to say this because I'm a teacher. but Ruth was the great-grandmother of King David. Jesus was born about 1,000 years after King David, and we know from the genealogical records in Matthew and Luke that Jesus was the direct descendant of David. Last week we studied Mary. Mary and Elizabeth are related, some kind of cousins probably. And Elizabeth was 6 months pregnant when the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary. And then Mary and Joseph met Anna in the temple when Jesus was about 1 month old. So everything just kind of ties in. I thought it was kind of cool how it all tied in together. Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into our text. Let's go ahead and read Luke chapter 1, verse 5 to 7, please.
There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless. But they had no child, because Elizabeth was barren, and they were both well advanced in years.
Thank you. All right, so we're introduced to Zachariah and his wife Elizabeth. They had dedicated their lives to doing everything God commanded, but they had no children. It says that Elizabeth wasn't able to have children. Don't know how they knew that for sure, but at this point, at least, Elizabeth was certainly too old to have children.
They were well advanced in years.
Yeah. So at this point, they're not able to, regardless of why they weren't able to. And then in verses,
my dad was in the hospital, and my older sister was with me, and she fainted in the hall. And someone said, "Is she pregnant?" The time I took, she was laughing. We got
right. Yeah. So in verses 8 to 23, we see the angel Gabriel appeared to Zechariah and told him that Elizabeth would have a son, and they were to name him John. So let's go ahead and read verses 24 to 25, please.
Now after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and she hid herself 5 months, saying, "Thus the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked on me to take away my reproach among people."
Thank you. And then verses 57 to 63, please.
Now Elizabeth's full time came from her to be delivered, and she brought forth a son. When her neighbors and relatives heard how the Lord had shown great mercy to her, they rejoiced with her. So it was on the 8th day that they came to circumcise the child, and they would have called him by the name of his father, Zacharias. His mother answered and said, No, he shall be called John. They said to her, There is no one among your relatives who has called him his name. So they made signs to his father what he would have him called. And he asked for a writing tablet and wrote, saying, His name is John. So they all marveled.
Thank you. All right, and then we want to read about Anna in Luke 2, verses 36 to 38, please.
Going back to that
Uh-huh.
on the 8th day,
Mhm.
to be circumcised. Sue, maybe you can verify this for us, but I have heard somewhere down the line that on the 8th day, there's a property that sets up in the blood that.
Clotting factors are the highest on the 8th day.
Then why have they
And
stopped
that's
it?
why.
Why are they
Okay,
doing it early now?
For
Because it's
convenience.
convenient.
Because they're already there in the hospital.
right.
I think I would insist that it wait till you.
We had a friend who's my age who took her firstborn on the 8th day and had him
Okay.
circumcised.
I mean, God does it for a reason.
All right, Luke 2, 36 to 38, please.
And there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher, who was advanced in years and had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then as a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple, serving night and day with fastings and prayer. At that very moment, she came up and began giving thanks to God and continued to speak to him of all those who were looking for the redemption of Jerusalem.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so first point, the similarities between Elizabeth and Anna. And one of those similarities was their position in society. Now, on the handout, I used the word insignificant, and that really wasn't the right word. I think Elizabeth put it much better in Luke 1:25 when she calls her inability to have children a public shame or a public reproach. I mean, everybody knew she wasn't able to have children. The easy to read version says, now people will stop thinking there is something wrong with me. Because that was the case, right? If you weren't able to have children, God was somehow punishing you for something.
Why don't you want children?
Well, yeah, at this point, it wasn't why don't you want them? It was what's wrong with you? What have you done?
Yeah.
In this culture, being childless was seen as a sign of God's punishment. Children were essential for carrying on the family name. They were essential for economic support as the parents aged. They didn't have Social Security or the social programs we have, or the kind of retirement programs that we have. And Anna would have been in a very vulnerable social position. She had no husband or son for protection. Jesus said in Matthew 23:14, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you devour widows' houses. Many people, including the religious leaders, took advantage of widows because they were just in a vulnerable position.
That does not surprise
No, I mean, but it happened. And God, there's dozens of verses where God says to protect the widows. This is how you are to protect the widows and the orphans over and over. It's a command from God. It's very important to him. God even says at one point that, that he is the protector of widows and orphans. So the idea, so when Jesus confronts Pharisees and the religious leaders for the way that they are treating the widows in that society, he gets right in their faces. You're hypocrites. How can you be doing this to them? So the second similarity between them is that they were both women of prayer. Luke 2:37 says that Anna did not leave the temple grounds, serving night and day with fasts and prayers. And then finally, both women were senior ladies. So I kind of like this, studying them, because Luke 1:7 just tells us that Elizabeth was advanced in years, but she was certainly past the age of childbearing. So she was certainly in her late 50s, 60s. We don't know. We don't know what age, but she was that says advanced in years. And then Luke 2:37 just says Anna was 84 years old. So these are senior ladies. They had a lot in common, and they were two senior ladies who wouldn't have seemed especially important to their neighbors or the people around them, because it's kind of, oh, that's Anna. She's always been here. She's, if you need anything, then, ask her. Oh, that's Elizabeth. She's Zachariah's husband. Good lady, but they wouldn't have been seen as especially important to their neighbors or other people, but they were both devoted to God. Okay. Any comments about their similarities? Yes.
Well, this is just a sidebar, not a comment. But Anna, this is just, she's mentioned so briefly, so she must have had it because of what she did here. But it's very significant.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on their similarities? I just like that we're studying, specifically senior women today. It's like that just made me happy this week.
Well,
So-
it makes us think of Sarah.
Yeah. And how, we're and our responsibilities, even as we age, to being devoted to God and still being actively devoted to God. So my second point is that I'm sorry, there were three ways that they both demonstrated their purity of heart. That is, they demonstrated their single-minded devotion to God. And I can't even hear anything these days, but I didn't hear you. Was there?
I just said I can't imagine having a baby at that age.
Oh, I know.
God must help them through that too.
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
didn't have cesarean.
Right. But again, so they both demonstrated their purity of heart, and one way was in their obedience. Luke 1:6 says that Zechariah and Elizabeth were both righteous in the sight of God, walking blamelessly in all the commandments and requirements of the Lord. Now that description that's in Luke chapter 1, righteous and walking blamelessly, that is not used often in the Bible. It really isn't. It was used to describe Noah in Genesis 6:9, and it was used to describe Job in Job 1. David says that he's blameless in 2 Samuel 22, but to actually have it written about you, those were the only two examples I could find, was Noah and Job. And it's kind of like, okay, this is kind of special. That idea of walking blamelessly means that there's no hidden sin. Okay, there's no divided loyalty. There's a purity of heart, again, that pure heart, and a devotion to obeying God's word. And that idea of no hidden sin, it's an important claim about Elizabeth, because realize what people would have said about her since she got married and couldn't have kids. There's got to be something wrong with her. We don't know it. There's got to be something there. Some secret sin that caused God to prevent her from having children. That would have been the assumption. Remember, Job chapters 4-23. All of that time, Job's friends were insisting, we don't know what your sin is. Maybe it's this, or this, but it's got to be there. There's got to be some sin, there's some reason God is punishing you. And so, I mean, even today, I'm sure, people, it's bad things happen. It's kind of like, oh, there's still that tendency. It's kind of, well, I wonder what happened. But it was at the time of Jesus, when they see the man blind, the apostles ask him, who sinned? Because the assumption isn't, was there sin? Maybe there's sin. Do we need to look at our lives when things go wrong? Sure. But the assumption was, who sinned, him or his mother? It's kind of like, what? So Luke, inspired by the Holy Spirit, wrote that Elizabeth was righteous and walking blamelessly. She had no hidden sin. Okay, so he's setting that up straight up front, saying there is no hidden sin here. That's not the reason she didn't have a child. God wasn't punishing her in spite of
Purpose for her.
Yeah, he had a purpose for Elizabeth. Okay.
Because this, with God, everything is planned in advance.
Right.
With God. And so John had to come before Jesus could come.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. Any other comments about how they?
But if she had had other children, John wouldn't have stood out and been as special,
Right.
Because I mean, he's going to make himself very known.
Oh yeah.
And but Jesus was the firstborn also. So
Mm-hmm. So the second way that they both demonstrated purity of heart was in their faith. Now, to understand the faith of Jews at this time, at the time of Jesus, you have to understand history and prophecy. Israel had been a conquered people living under foreign rule for more than 600 years,
What's
closer to
new?
700 years. Huh?
What's new?
Yeah. So, but we got to remember the prophecies in Daniel chapter 2 described 4 kingdoms. Okay, starting with Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, and then Rome. And during the Roman Empire, the prophecy was from Daniel 2:44, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. Now, the Jews at the time of Jesus were living under that 4th kingdom. They knew this. They can add just like we can. It's like, okay, we had Babylon, we had the Medo-Persian, we had Greece. I mean, in Daniel chapter 8, the angel in interpreting these visions to Daniel even calls out the names Medo-Persia and Greece. He names them, and so now they're in that 4th kingdom, and they know this. They know the promised time of the promised Messiah is now. And so they're looking for the Messiah. And it's an exciting time because they know this is a time that God has promised to send his Messiah, as he promised King David in 2 Samuel 7. In verse 12, he says, I will raise up your descendant after you who will come from you, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. It's now, the time is now. And so everybody's excited. Is he over here? Is he over there? And there are people, jumping up and saying, and sometimes, I'm he, I'm something. And it's an exciting time. Go ahead.
But the other thing is, when Jesus came, they didn't really see him as who he said he was.
Oh, true,
They
because
thought he was going to be a king.
right.
Well, if you're gonna have a throne of a kingdom, you think of a king and all the riches.
Right,
and-
right.
And a servant and,
Mhm.
we're servants of him and all this.
But that's ignoring a lot of the other prophecy. But
Yeah.
Right, but they picked the one they wanted.
But Israel at this time was yearning for that promised Messiah, knowing that they were living in the prophesied time. So it's an exciting time, and they're saying, okay, where is he? Where is he? Where could he be? And in Luke 2:26, Simeon had been told that he would not die before he saw the Lord's Christ. And I seriously doubt he kept that to himself when he would go to the temple. And he would be speaking this encouragement to other people, saying, the time is now. I've been promised, I'm an old man, and the Messiah is going to come during my lifetime. I'm going to get to see him. God has promised me that. And so he's telling everybody that he meets, the time is now. The time, it's got to be very, very quickly. I'm an old guy, it's got to be soon. And so he's telling all these people, now is the time. And Elizabeth and Anna shared this faithful anticipation that the Messiah was almost here and that his appearing was imminent. So that's that's all of Israel is excited about this time. It's got, and under the oppressive Roman rule, they're telling themselves, okay, it's got to be soon. It's got to be soon. Our deliverance has to be soon. And then in Luke 1:41 tells us that when Mary came to visit Elizabeth, Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit and said in Luke 1:43, how has it happened to me that the mother of my Lord would come to me? For behold, when the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby leaped in my womb for joy. And so Elizabeth and Mary now know it's here, okay? Mary is pregnant with the promised Messiah. And so it's a very exciting time.
That's an indication maybe that there is something that comes through to the unborn child.
In the case of Elizabeth and John the Baptist, yes, because she says straight up that he leaped when he, as soon as he heard you, he leaped. And he's 6, and the baby is 6 months old at this point, and yeah, heard the voice of Mary and was very excited at hearing the voice of Mary.
Makes me wonder now what unborn children really subconsciously, after they're born, go back to. We'll never know.
No,
But
that's true.
I've wondered about it.
Well, the Holy Spirit had a lot to do with this.
Yes.
part.
Yeah.
That's
Certainly in this
that's
case, the Holy
Yes.
Spirit was part of this.
I don't remember too much.
I remember.
So the third way that they both demonstrated purity of heart was in their humility. That is, in thinking less of themselves, not thinking down on themselves as other people probably did, because again, childless widow, but thinking less of themselves. Elizabeth, yeah,
Continued on.
oh yeah,
They continued on with God no matter what. people-
yes. Elizabeth had every reason to be totally focused on herself in her pregnancy. I mean, if you've waited a long time to get pregnant, it's just kind of, just the baby. That's all you can think about. And yet, Elizabeth goes on to say in Luke 1:45, and blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what has been spoken to her by the Lord. Elizabeth knew what would probably happen when Mary went back home pregnant, and Joseph knew that he wasn't the father. Luke 1:56 says that Mary stayed with her about 3 months and then returned to her home. Don't want to read too much into things, but she stayed with her for 3 months. And Elizabeth, being the person who she was, I'm pretty sure, again, it's not written out, but I'm pretty sure Elizabeth continued to be an encouragement to Mary the whole time that she was with her and strengthening her, because Mary was about to go home. When she went home, she wasn't going to face that kind of encouragement, that kind of belief in what she had to say about her pregnancy. Yes.
Quick question, wouldn't Elizabeth have had John while Mary was there?
Possibly, probably. Again, that's an assumption, but probably. I can't imagine staying up until the time of the birth and then leaving before 6 months.
But
6 months when the angel appeared to Mary, when Gabriel appeared to Mary, and then Mary went to stay 3 months with Elizabeth. So probably, but since it doesn't say so, I'm not going to say
how
so.
far along was Mary when she went to visit?
We don't know.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So then Anna also had every reason to be totally focused on herself and her own problems. Being a childless widow of that time was no joke. I mean, she would have been, it meant a life of very difficult poverty to be a childless widow then. Instead, in Luke 2:37, it says, then as a widow to the age of 84, she did not leave the temple grounds, serving night and day with fasts and prayers. Don't know what she did. I knew there were responsibilities there. Someone had to be baking the showbread and all this kind of stuff. Don't know what she did. Don't know if she just picked up trash in the court of the women. Don't know. Don't know if she met with the women that came to the court of the women to worship and encourage them. We do not know what she did, but it says that she did not leave the temple grounds, serving night and day. Any comments on how they
Well,
both demonstrated their
It
purity of
said,
heart?
if it said serving night and day, we know she was doing something.
She was doing something. She was doing everything she could at whatever age she was. All right. And then thirdly, God was able to use them. My third point today is that God was able to use them because of their purity of heart. Elizabeth was the mother of John the Baptist. She encouraged and cared for a young, pregnant, probably pretty nervous Mary. In Luke 1:42, she cried out with a loud voice and said, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb." That kind of attitude would have continued for the next 3 months, guaranteed. I mean, caring for her.
Elizabeth was a mature person.
Yes,
And Mary was a young girl.
Oh,
yes.
yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
yeah,
And she helped her along and
yeah. I mean, picture Mary at probably 15, 16 years old, pregnant, and then she's at least 3 months pregnant when she goes back, and she knows she's going back to face her town, her hometown. Nobody's going to believe her that an angel appeared to
was
her.
going to say things to her.
Yeah,
but-
Joseph doesn't believe her. I
Okay.
mean, so there's a lot she
But-
has to face. But yeah, and they spent that time, and I think that time was a blessing for Mary and helped build up her strength, build up her for the coming time that was going to be difficult.
Because I mean, since Elizabeth knew what was going on and she was also experiencing this.
Right.
And being a mature religious person, she
Yeah.
could guide Mary through all this, because I can imagine going home and telling my mother I was pregnant at
Oh,
this
yeah.
time, and the mom was not gonna believe it.
Right. Right. And then Anna, when she saw the baby Jesus in the temple, she gave thanks to God and continued to speak about him to all those who were looking forward to the redemption of Israel. In Luke 2:38, remember, they were expecting the redemption of Israel right now during this time. And so she's telling people, I have seen him. I have seen the Messiah. I have seen the one who is here for the redemption of Jerusalem. And God was able to use these two senior ladies to joyfully announce that the Messiah had come into the world. I mean, we always remember the shepherds because that was pretty cool. The angels appeared to them and sang before them and sang praises to Jesus. They went into town and searched until they found Jesus, as a newborn. And went to him, and then they went around telling everybody. And then sometime later, the wise men, who were clearly very wealthy and very learned men, they come and then they spread around the news of the Messiah. But here are two senior ladies that God also used to spread the news that the Messiah is here now. Not something to be looked forward to, at some point, but right now the Messiah is here. All right. Any other comments up to this point? Okay. All right. Little application for us. I have heard, and I won't say I've never felt this, but I've heard women say that there is nothing for them to do in the church. Anybody else ever heard that? I've heard it. I know, just ask Mary if you're looking for something to do, right? But I've heard this. I've heard this at most congregations I've been to. Someone eventually says, "Well, there's nothing for
That's
women to
because
do."
they come and they sit in a pew and then they go home.
I wasn't going to be quite that unkind, but not that that's unkind or untrue in any way.
Being
But
unkind, I'm being,
yeah.
I'm saying that if that is
Yes.
all you do,
Then
and you
yeah.
do nothing else for Christ,
Mm-hmm.
then that's all you do.
When I said unkind, I meant I was going to try to be a little more pitter patter about it, I guess. Just
A little blunt.
that's the right word. That's the right word. And when I have heard that, I have wondered if it's possible, if what that means is that there's nothing that they want to do.
Because I mean, like, okay, you take someone to a doctor's appointment.
That's
one
what
of the
Anita is doing right now.
You're
Yes.
helping someone who needs some help.
Yep.
She's my favorite Uber. I mean, so.
Well, come to mission footing, we can
Yeah.
always use people.
I mean, there's a lot of things you can do.
We've had work days where people have worked so hard to clean up areas that everybody uses, but can get pretty
Okay,
grungy.
you don't want to be a teacher, ask a teacher if there's something you can do for them.
Yep.
I mean, especially with the kids.
Yep.
You know?
There's always prayers for the teacher who stumbles over her words every single Wednesday morning. Anyway, but again, there's always things to be doing. I mean, stacking chairs is but again, that's service. And people look, when you see,
But that's not glorified.
it isn't, and
It
it's not
isn't.
in front of everybody and all this kind of stuff.
I took
And
someone to the grocery store, so what? Well,
uh-huh.
that person needed to go to the
Yeah.
grocery store.
In my opinion, you shouldn't be doing something to be getting attention on you. You should be doing
yeah.
it as a service
That's
to
what the
God.
Bible says.
And one way that we show that purity of heart, that single-minded devotion to God, is in serving one another. And we see that in the life of Elizabeth and in the life of Anna. Anna just says straight up that she served for probably if she lived with her husband for 7 years. Yeah, picked up trash in the court of the women,
For 7 years.
Yeah, and so she was a widow, possibly 7 years plus about the time that they get married. So she was possibly a widow for like 60 years. 60 years that
So she'll live off what people brought her to the temple, you think? I'm just going,
She-
I'm thinking, I mean, I'm not.
there was nothing she could do except ask for handouts.
Because she didn't have children, so.
Maybe
Right.
They didn't have family.
So-
So she stayed there at the temple, so I thought maybe people gave her handouts. And stuff.
Possibly, yeah, that people helped her out that way or
Just
brought her
thinking
food.
If I'll bring her a loaf of bread or
Right.
something,
Yeah, possibly that she was dependent on that. But again,
That carried down into Indian tribes too. That when they became a widow, they just put them out.
yeah,
Even their children couldn't help.
and yet here she was, that she served night and day with fasts and prayers, and we have God acknowledging her through the Holy Spirit in the writings of Luke.
Man may have forgotten her, but God didn't.
Absolutely, because of her purity of heart, because of her service and their purity.
Lie in bed and can't do anything, they can pray, and that's a
Mhm.
major thing.
Yeah.
Anyone.
My mom's health dropped off pretty seriously in her 60s, but at one point she was teaching ladies class and Bible class and working. I don't know how she did that, but that is way beyond me. But she got to the point where she was sending out cards, and that was what she could do. And then she got to the point where she said, okay, if you will stamp, we would talk through and she would pick out what messages she wanted me to stamp inside the cards that I would send her to send out, because what she felt like doing was signing her name and addressing the card. But she did that. And
My mother got to a point she couldn't prepare the meals to take someone to sick or whatever, but she knew somebody that was gonna do it, so she paid for the food.
yeah,
And then they
because
did it.
I mean, people who give up, and I heard this when I was in high school, someone said, oh, I used to do that, but I've retired from that. And I'm kind of like, you retired from good works? And said, yeah, I'm retired. I'm kind of like, wait a minute, I thought retirement for Christians was heaven. And that was me at, 16, 17, not being kind of confused at someone saying, oh, I just don't do that kind of thing anymore. Like, and I'm wondering, well, what do you do? I mean, I understand if you're not able,
I
but what
haven't
do you
read
do
the
now?
regulation that you're supposed to retire at such a
Right,
age.
right. That until faithful until death is what Revelation chapter 2 says.
Good example we had here, and I know Sue and Connor probably remember, I'm not sure everybody else, well, Glenda would, is Miss Virginia Brown. And she
I don't remember.
suffered a lot.
Yeah.
But regardless, she got to the point she could call people on the phone. They used to go visit in the hospital without, she couldn't do that. But she did something.
Yeah.
To the day she was gone.
And that's what I see in the life of Elizabeth, in the life of Anna. It's kind of okay, I have to adjust what I can do, but I'm going to keep doing. I'm not going to give up. I've told y'all before, the senior lady, when I was in college, I can't even remember her name now. I can't remember her face now. It's been 40 years. But every time,
Why you can't remember.
I know, but every time I asked her how she was, because she's on a walker, she's using a walker. I went to visit her at her home a couple of times. It was just a tiny little apartment. I was never aware of any family coming to visit her. I don't know, because again, I was 18 years old. I wasn't that interested in finding out everything about her life history, but every time I asked her how she was doing, she told me she was blessed to be able to come to worship God. Never a complaint from that woman, on her walker, not always able to be there, always sat with the college age. And I know I told y'all that at the time, being a college student, I was ashamed. It's kind of like, if I was up late Saturday night, that was on me, and I was going to be there Sunday morning because I knew she would be there, and I was ashamed not to be there.
Like Emma, I've been talking to her on,
Mhm.
now that only sit over there, and she was going, oh, I'm gonna have to work my first overnight shifts. We're gonna have to work 2 overnights. And of course, and she had a test coming up and stuff, but she was still there.
Mhm.
She looked horrible, but
Yeah.
just.
Well, I remember Miss Maxine, no matter what, she was always here.
But again, sometimes these elderly women have such an impact. And this woman that I've told y'all about before, she still has an impact on my life 40 years, and countless others, because she was there sitting with the college age, talking with them, encouraging them, never a complaint. And she still has an impact on me 40 years later.
The lady like that, she was my 2nd grade school teacher. She was my 2nd grade Bible class teacher. I saw her every day but Saturday. I saw her sitting in church. I saw her lead me in the Bible, and I saw her lead me in reading.
Mhm.
I just thought she was wonderful.
Even if we don't teach kids, they're still watching us. I mean, I remember my mom telling me when I was like 17 or something like that, that another friend of hers had told them that her kids watch me. And I'm kind of like, what? And said, they're watching you. She told me they watch you for how you behave in worship. I'm kind of like, okay, it's a little freaky for a 17-year-old to hear. But again, we have an influence on those even just watching us. I know I've probably told this before, but when we were in California, we were in a very mixed congregation, and I was teaching the little kids class. I did not know anything about teaching little kids class. I did not want to be doing that, but I determined, and it was half a dozen kids in this tiny little room, and they were all just neighborhood kids that one man picked up. They called him grandpa. I don't know if they were related or not, probably not, but he picked them up. And so they were unchurched kids. And I'm kind of like, okay, I can show them the love of Christ. probably about all I can do. And then they all wanted to sit with me and worship. It's like, okay. And so it's kind of, and so we had a rotation and we would take turns and we picked up some of them after a while and we had a rotation. We would pick, take turns who was going to. So this one time, this one little boy, I think he was 9 years old at the time, and he kept leaning on me. Well, he's 9 years old. He's too big to lean on me. And so I would kind of sit up and sit up and, did that a number of times. And one older gentleman came up to me afterwards. He was in his late 60s and he's crying buckets of tears. And he said, I was watching how you treated that little boy, and I never knew these are his words, that a white woman could treat a little black boy that well, that patiently. But he's crying buckets of tears at that. And I'm kind of like, I knew I was having an influence on that little boy, but people were watching me, and we never know who's watching us. And Jesus says in Matthew 25:40, he says, the truth is, anything you did for any of my people here, you also did to me.
We used to have
Any
a guy
small
come
little
in,
thing.
and I don't know how often he bathed, and his clothes were really pitiful, but he was sitting in church. Well, nobody wanted to sit by him, so Mother and I sat by him. And then she got worried about it. It's like, you think we ought to give you some clothes and stuff? And I said, well, Mother, I don't know his predicament. I don't know him personally. But we did, and we always made sure we sat by him, because nobody would sit with him.
Yep.
And we felt, and I can't remember, it's been so long ago. She probably offered him some stuff, but I think I found out some more about his predicament and stuff. And we always made sure that our luncheons or anything, he got food to take home and all that.
Mhm.
But I thought, why are you snubbing a man just because he does not look like you? And then
Yeah.
you don't know his predicament.
But again, when Jesus says a cup of water,
Yeah.
visiting somebody, calling somebody, these things, he says, if you do this in his name, it's like you're doing it to him. And it's kind of like in that.
Well, I'm complimenting my mother, not me.
Yeah. But again, Romans 12:10 says, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves. 1 Peter 4:10, God has shown you his grace in many different ways, so be good servants and use whatever gift he has given you in a way that will best serve each other. So that's the whole thing. It's kind of like, and we all have things that we struggle with. Elizabeth and Mary and Mary and Anna all struggled, and we're familiar with those struggles of being alone, of being forgotten by people around. But they focused on someone else, and that pulls you out of. If you can pull yourself out of self-focus, that's good for you. Number one, it keeps you out of depression. But one of the best ways of doing that is to focus on someone else's needs. And then you just kind of forget about your own needs. And it's kind of like, oh, wait a minute, I was having a pity party. What happened to that? It's kind of like, well, no, you started focusing on somebody else. Any other thoughts as we're closing up here?
You have your little routines, you have your little things. Oh, Monday I do this, Tuesday I do this, whatever. But sometimes you got to get out of your comfort zone a little.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe go to a house that you don't really want to go to, that you feel a little uncomfortable because there's people in there.
Teach a ladies class when you know you're not a teacher. Anyway,
Wonderful, Kathy.
I am not looking for compliments, but
But we keep
I look
showing
at my
up.
mom. That's true. I look at my mom, who is very much a teacher and just a wonderful teacher, and I'm kind of like, but anyway, not the purpose, not the focus.
Her mom was a good teacher,
Yeah.
but she's always said, don't look at me like you do my mom.
I know. Anyway, any other thoughts before we finish up here?
Kathy, I have a thought.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a great niece, and she was autistic. And every Sunday, as soon as church was over, she would run to the back of the church, and she would start picking up all the leftover bulletins. And one of the elders came by, and he says, "Here, I'll do that." And she says, no, this is my job. This is
There
my
you go.
job.
Yep.
And when she passed away, this was just last year, people would say, I remember Janice because she'd run down the hall saying, Hi, my name's Janice. What's your name?
That's
So,
great.
People remembered her because of the little things that she done.
That's fantastic. I met the parents of one of Sarah's friends this past time we were visiting her, and they found out that we had gone, that my mom had gone to the Brazos Valley Church of Christ in Bryan, Texas, and they're going, "What's her name?" I know her. It's kind of like, and they remembered my mom, and my mom died 7 years ago, and they just remembered being there and
That's neat.
remembered my mom, and it's just kind of like we have an
We have
impact.
to watch what we say.
Yes, because people remember that too.
I got out of my comfort zone at Eisenhower, and I said that I signed up to take care of the babies a certain week during worship, and it was a whole bunch of us ladies, and we rotated. We were gonna take care of the little ones, so I signed up for it. A lady found out about it, and she said, "Why in the world would you do it? You don't have any children, you don't know anything about it."
Mm,
I never did it again.
that's that same attitude
Never
that,
did it
yeah,
again.
that is that same attitude that Elizabeth would have had.
Because
people
I had
back
such
into-
doubt afterwards.
Yep. We used to pick up this one older lady, I forget where we lived, but she was a delight to pick up. Sweet, kind, all that kind of stuff. And then when we moved, we were asked to pick up this one older lady who nobody wanted to pick her up. She sat in the back and said things, and it's like, oh my, oh my. And it's kind of, we get to worship, and it's kind of like, okay. Yeah,
You're excellent at training dogs, it's no different.
that's true.
I think I'd have been a horrible mother.
Oh, no, I
Kinda
don't
like
think so.
when I worked for credit union, we had this man worked at the Kelly plant, and you could actually, and I don't mean to be mean or ugly, but it's true, you can smell those people when they hit the front door. It stunk up the whole credit union. Nobody wanted to wait on them.
Mhm.
And, when I was training to be a teller, when they hit the door, everybody in the tellers would just like disappear. I said, I wait on them. I mean, hey, they're gonna leave here in a little bit. But I waited on them, but
Yep.
nobody wanted to wait on them. And I'm literally, their clothes just, they wasn't filthy looking, but they were just kind of dirty looking. But I'm here to tell you, when I first happened to that, they came in, I went by where we had a little seating area, and I thought, they were gone at that time, they were back in one of the offices, and I thought, what is that smell? And someone said, oh, that's the door here, and I thought,
Yeah. We used to have customers, we had to spray the Lysol after they.
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the secretaries, when they left, she got the Lysol and he went open the front door and pushed the chairs outside. And it's literally, you could smell, they smelled up the whole credit union. It was
We had a guy
in
in
the
that-
way.
Yeah.
It was
Some
great.
people may
All
not
right.
know what Kelly was. It was the tire.
Kelly Credit Union,
Yeah.
it's a tire company.
Oh,
Kelly's
Yeah,
Greenfield
Kelly,
Tire
I meant the
Company.
tire, the guy's
Kelly
name
is
is
also-
for
I
the.
thought everybody knew what Kelly was.
Yeah. Anyway,
It's Greenfield Tire Company.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Kathy.
that's okay. Elizabeth and Anna are examples of purity of heart. That is that single-minded devotion to seeking God and submitting to His will, regardless of circumstances or even age. Each of us, regardless of age or circumstances, we have a vital role for God. God has in sharing the message of Christ and serving one another. I want to finish with, it's time to finish. I want to finish with 1 Kings 8, verse 61. Your hearts, therefore, shall be wholly devoted to the Lord our God, to walk in His statutes and keep His commandments. Thank you so much for your time and for your comments.